The politics lead now. It's a showdown in the Lone Star State, perhaps another warning shot for the Republican establishment. Texas Congressman Steve Stockman, a Tea Party favorite, just threw his hat into the ring for next year's Senate race in a primary challenge against fellow Texan and incumbent Senator John Cornyn, a member of the Senate Republican leadership who's been ranked as one of the more conservative members of the Senate staff. In 2008, Cornyn ran this web ad, borrowing a tune from the late, great Johnny Cash.
You see, I'm from Texas, where we do things quick, and the way this place is run's about to make me sick. Big John.
Yes, the work of Fred Davis. So can the self-styled Big Bad John, can he be taken down? Let's ask our panel. CNN political commentator and columnist for the New York Times, Ross Douthat, Democratic strategist and former senior advisor to the Hillary Clinton campaign, Kiki McLean, and White House correspondent for Yahoo News, Olivier Knox. Ross, I'll start with you. Cornyn has a war chest of $7 million. Stockman, 32 grand.
And he's sending out some great direct mail, except he's sending it out online. He's putting up fundraising appeals that basically describe the name John Cornyn is only mentioned with the epithet liberal attached. So it's liberal John Cornyn should take his Massachusetts values.
He's really calling him a liberal?
Oh, you haven't? Oh, yeah. No.
That.
The Stockman pitch is that it's not John Cornyn. Liberal John Cornyn has, betrayed conservatism in 17 different ways. And if he wants to be a liberal in the Senate, he should run for the Senate from Massachusetts. So, look, it's going to be very entertaining at the very least.
Look, I mean, I guess you could make the case that Steve Stockman is more conservative than John Cornyn.
Well, you can. There's a 7% difference in their lifetime rating from the American Conservative Union, and that 7% is the 7% on which the American Republic stands or falls. So,
but Olivier, does Steve Stockman have a chance here, do you think? I mean, you never know, really.
It's going to be really fun to watch both this race and the one in Kentucky, where Republican leaders, people who are known as bedrock conservatives, are facing challenges on this notion that they're somehow not true to the faith. Matt Bevin in Kentucky, Steve Stockman in Texas. I'm not hearing a lot of concern from the establishment, though. I think that the National Republican Senate Committee would like Harry Reid and the White House to maybe stop praising McConnell and Cornyn.
But I mean, Kiki, this is
I'm a Texan here.
You're a Texan?
I'm from South Texas, born and reared, and
I keep hearing about that state becoming blue. I still never.
You know what? I wore the
color today.
I wore the sweater today.
To the blue
Texas. The guys were going to go to fashion.
Here's the only actual blue Texas I've ever seen.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in an era of a great blue Texas with Mr. Pickle and Barbara Jordan and Lloyd Benson. But here's the thing about, and Ann Richards, the thing about Texas politics that you have to remember is they don't like people from outside the country, no offense, gentlemen, we call it the country, from telling them what will or won't work in their politics. And that 7% that you refer to, there's a $7 million, but there's also that 7%, remember, this is a primary fight.
Right.
And Governor Perry has done a lot to seed the emotional, stoke the emotional fire of the super uber Tea Party conservatives in Texas. So we can giggle and laugh, and there's a lot of reasons statistically to do that in this one. But don't be surprised if Texas.
The only thing I'm laughing at is liberal John Cornyn, because he's not a liberal. But
and there's a real.
But I do think
Stockman's argument, right? Yeah. is focused in this pitch that I can't believe I'm the only one who's read, is focused particularly on the debate about defunding Obamacare and the debate about the government shutdown. And it's exactly the line of argument that I think we expected coming out of that intra-Republican debate to be used.
No,
where the fact that Cornyn objected to the shutdown
but what's interesting about that is
that he's pro-Obamacare. That's the argument.
Yeah, what's interesting is, in a big picture you would look up for a general election, you would say, he's not telling you what he wants to do, which is what he has to do in order to win, in terms of Stockman. But in another sense, he's starting his campaign by filing with explaining why he's done it, by giving already that boiled down messaging, why I don't like that liberal Cornyn. He calls him, right?
But remember, Ted Cruz, the other senator from Texas, he was not the Republican Party establishment favorite in Texas.
And I think that's why we're seeing a lot of the attention from the media to some of these early primary announcements. A lot of reporters feel a little bit burned from the last time the way they handled the Ted Cruz's, or even going back, Rand Paul. So I think we're seeing a lot of attention for that reason. But, I wasn't focusing so much on the liberal John Cornyn. I did like that Steve Stockman told his supporters they would not have to face actual bayonets.
Not yet. Not yet.
But here's the other thing. No incumbent wants a primary challenge.
Right.
Regardless of how comical you may think it is or isn't. It's bad, and this is a demonstration that there is not cohesion in the Republican Party. There's a lack of leadership in the Republican Party, and right now it doesn't even look like anybody's getting the tools in an effort to build a bridge to bring that party back together. That's the problem.
Let's talk about cohesion and leadership, because there's at least an indication that there's some lacking at the White House with an announcement that John Podesta, former Clinton White House Chief of Staff, is going to be coming on board the Obama White House to become counselor. I'm not exactly, maybe you know, Olivia, being a White House correspondent, what exactly is he going to be doing?
Well, I think he's going to be trying to steady the ship over there. You know, this is a guy who's got a long career in Washington. He's done a lot of work like this before in the Clinton White House, for example. I think this is clearly the transfusion. The question is whether it's the transfusion before the amputation in terms of the White House staff. You know, the president and other top aides have suggested that somewhere down the line, probably after they smooth out the wrinkles, putting it mildly, for Obamacare, they would be open to looking at a review of, you know, the team, seeing who's playing well and who's not. I haven't heard anything about amputation yet, but this is a very interesting transfusion.
Kiki, and a brand new Q poll out this hour has President Obama at a new historic low, 38% approval. I mean, they need to do something.
Look, he doesn't need to raise his approval ratings just for the sake of raising them. Big change like Obamacare.
But it would be nice.
Well, those are nice.
Hypothetically.
Those are nice to make us all feel good on a panel, but that doesn't have anything to do, what his numbers are, doesn't have anything to do with the kind of work he's trying to do for the country. And big change comes with a cost, sometimes of your own favorability rating. I want to challenge the premise of how you open this section of the conversation by talking about the lack of leadership. I actually think when a leader brings in great talent, that's a tremendous sign of leadership. To invite somebody like John Podesta to join the team when there are really big, difficult issues at hand, I think is a remarkable sign of leadership.
Well, if you're bringing in a new leader, then I'm just saying, then you had a lack, and then you brought it in to fill the lack.
Now they have more
I think
it's just more amazing.
I think good leaders bring good talent to the table.
I'm not disputing that, but
I think two points about Podesta. One is that this is a guy who, in his first tour as chief of staff in the Clinton years, has experience basically running a White House at the end of an administration, when you aren't doing a lot of big things in Congress. You're mostly doing things through the bureaucracy. You know, and Podesta's also incredibly hooked up with, you know, Washington insiders of every stripe, industry, and so on. And then the other thing, though, to your point, is the approval ratings need to go up for the Democrats to survive in 2014. That is why they matter.
The other benefit of John, in
2016.
Well, the other benefit of John joining them is people are tired.
Right. People are
people
burned
have served
out.
a long time.
Kiki McLean, Ross Douthat, Olivia Knox, thank you so much. Great job. Coming up.